There are stars who sell records, and then there are the ones who quietly changed whether people like us get to stay alive. A pop diva in a meat dress, a princess holding an untouchable hand, a drag queen on TV, a CEO in a glass closet, a girl from Vietnam who refused to be a joke. These are the legends who risked careers, reputations, even their lives so the gay community could finally breathe. Stay to the end. One of them might feel a little too much like you. 1. Lady Gaga, the pop star, who turned too much into a lifeline. There are pop stars who make hits. And then there's the woman who built a home for kids the world threw away. Before she was Lady Gaga, she was Stefani, the weird girl. Too dramatic, too intense, too extra. The kind of kid people bully for sport. She could have folded herself smaller. Instead, she turned herself into a spectacle. Wigs, latex, meat dress, eyeliner like war paint. If they were going to call her a freak, she'd be the freak who owned the whole stage. But the armor wasn't random. She knew exactly who she was talking to. The queer kid in a small town, the bi teen with no words yet, the trans kid Googling, "Am I insane?" at 3 a.m. When she sang "No matter gay, straight, or bi, lesbian, transgender life," she didn't hide us in metaphors. She said our names on mainstream radio when most artists were still dodging pronouns. Then she did what most pop stars never bother with. She built real infrastructure. Born This Way Foundation isn't just rainbow branding. It's hotlines, research grants, school programs, campaigns about anxiety, self-harm, bullying. It's Gaga showing up in hospitals, backstage with fans who say, "Your song kept me alive," and actually staying for the conversation. And of course, the internet had opinions. She's exploiting gay kids for clout. She turned trauma into a brand? Slap a rainbow on it, call it activism. Is she a marketing genius? Absolutely. Does she understand the power of image? Better than almost anyone. But here's the uncomfortable question. If a carefully crafted image convinces a teenager not to kill themselves, is it just PR? Somewhere, a kid didn't jump because a strange woman in glitter screamed, "You were born this way, baby." That kid doesn't care about brand strategy. For them, Gaga wasn't a campaign. She was the first adult who said, "You are not a mistake." So what do you value more? The purity of someone's motives or the lives that get saved in the crossfire? 2. Princess Diana, the royal who touched the untouchable. In the late 80s, AIDS came with a second diagnosis: disgust. People thought you could catch it from a handshake. Patients were isolated, families abandoned sons, churches preached fear. Gay men with lesions on their skin were treated like biohazards. Then cameras crowded into a hospital ward in London. A man with AIDS waited on a bed, bracing for the usual flinch. Instead, the Princess of Wales walked in, pulled up a chair, and took his hand with her bare fingers. No gloves, no hesitation, just human touch. That single image went around the world. A royal, symbol of tradition, respectability, good society, telling millions with one gesture, he is not dirty, he is not dangerous, he is not less. For a lot of people, that picture did more than any pamphlet. If she wasn't afraid to touch him, maybe they didn't have to be either. And it wasn't a one-off stunt. Diana kept going back to hospices and wards, sometimes without cameras. She sat on beds, listened to men whose families wouldn't visit, hugged people whose churches said they were going to hell. A princess didn't just show up. She stayed long enough to hear their stories. The cynics, of course, had their script ready. Perfect PR for a messy royal family. She knew exactly where the cameras were. A hug doesn't change policy. Maybe it was good PR. maybe she did understand optics. But donations spiked, attitudes softened, medical staff relaxed. Kids growing up with gay uncles and HIV-positive parents suddenly had a counter-image to unclean, a princess holding a patient's hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sometimes, culture doesn't shift because a law changes. It shifts because a photograph worms its way into our moral wiring and refuses to leave. So call it symbolism, call it spin. But if one carefully staged moment made millions of people less afraid to touch, hug, and care for people with HIV, are you really sure you want to dismiss it as just a photo op? 3. Elton John, the man who turned regret into a war against AIDS. Before the knighthood and the charity galas, Elton John was chaos in sunglasses. The headlines loved him. Overdoses, tantrums, mountains of cocaine, bottles drained to the bottom. He watched friends, especially gay friends, die of AIDS in the 80s and 90s, and by his own admission, spent years escaping the grief instead of fighting it. Then came a breaking point. Too many funerals, too many names erased. Meeting Ryan White, a teenager infected through a blood transfusion and treated like a monster, shoved a mirror in Elton's face. Guilt turned into a question. Am I going to spend the rest of my life numbing out, or am I going to do something? In 1992, he did. The Elton John AIDS Foundation was born. What could have been a nice logo became a machine. Hundreds of millions of dollars raised, thousands of projects funded in dozens of countries. Money turned into HIV tests, ARV meds, clean needles, outreach to queer people, sex workers, drug users, the very groups most governments would rather ignore. And still, the criticism comes. He's using AIDS to polish his legacy. He partied while his friends died. Now he wants a redemption arc. It's easy to be generous when you're rich. Some of that hits a nerve because it's not entirely wrong. Elton did arrive late. He did waste years. But most people stay late and never show up at all. They feel bad, post a hashtag, move on. Elton chose the boring, exhausting work. Meetings, lobbying, fundraising, flying to places where being gay is still a crime and saying, these people deserve to live. And when governments blacklist his foundation, label it undesirable. Kick it out rather than admit LGBTQ people have rights. That tells you exactly how dangerous one washed-up rock star with a piano and a conscience can be. Elton John is not a saint. He's a man who looked at the bodies behind him and decided his sobriety had to mean more than survival. So he turned it into a weapon against stigma and silence. Maybe you can pick apart his timing, his motives, his privilege. But if the end result is clinics open, meds delivered, and people with HIV living long enough to dance to Tiny Dancer at their grandkid's wedding, do you really care that the hand signing the checks once shook from cocaine? Or are you just glad that, finally, it's signing on your side? 4. Tim Cook, the quiet CEO who came out for someone he'll never meet. Tim Cook could have stayed invisible. He was already running Apple, the most watched company on Earth. Billion-dollar products, presidents on speed dial, a life so protected he never had to answer a single personal question honestly. Instead, in 2014, he published a short essay that blew the door off the glass closet. I'm proud to be gay. Not hinted, not no comment. The CEO of Apple on record, in a world where being gay is still illegal in dozens of countries where his company does business. Why risk it? He said it plainly. If hearing that the CEO of Apple is gay helps even one person struggling to accept who they are, then giving up his privacy is worth it. That's not a Pride Month tweet. That's a man saying, I am willing to be the target so some kid I'll never meet feels less alone. Under his leadership, Apple didn't just throw rainbows on a logo. The company filed briefs for marriage equality, opposed anti-LGBTQ laws, extended benefits and protections to queer and trans employees. Not perfect activism, but real policy backed by real money and lawyers. And still, he gets hammered from both sides. He's pinkwashing to sell iPhones. He's pushing a gay agenda on kids. He waited until he was rich and safe. Where's the bravery in that? Maybe you think real courage belongs to drag queens in hostile towns or teens coming out to dangerous families. You're not wrong. But closets at the top are some of the thickest there are. The higher you climb, the more people you can drag out of the dark with a single sentence, or leave there by staying quiet. Tim Cook had everything to lose and nothing material to gain. What he bought with that one line was something you can't graph on a stock chart. The moment a scared kid staring at a cracked iPhone thinks, if the guy who runs this company can be gay and still be respected, maybe I can survive high school. Would the world really be better if he'd kept his mouth shut? 5. RuPaul, the drag queen who turned self-love into a weapon. Before RuPaul was a meme, he was a 6-foot-something black drag queen hustling in clubs most people would never admit they visited. Too tall, too black, too queer, too loud. Friends were dying of AIDS, cops raided bars, and the world told people like him to stay underground or disappear. He could have kept performing for drink tickets and tips. Instead, he walked drag right into the mainstream. RuPaul's Drag Race took what people mocked in secret and put it in HD. Wigs, lashes, foam hips, men transforming into creatures they invented for themselves. Under the jokes was a thesis. Gender is a costume. Shame is optional. You're allowed to become your own fantasy. Every episode, beneath the glitter, there's the same heartbeat. A queen in the workroom, wiping off makeup, talking about being kicked out at 14, about HIV, addiction, suicide attempts. Then she walks the runway anyway. At the end, RuPaul says the line that's practically a spell. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you gonna love somebody else? It's corny. Until you realize for some viewers, that's the only time anyone has ever said that to them. And yes, RuPaul is complicated. He built an empire while many queens stayed broke. He hurt trans folks with his words before he learned better. He turned rebellion into a franchise with sponsors. All true and worth arguing about. But look at what changed. Teenagers in tiny towns secretly practicing runway walks. Parents who once spat slurs now quoting "Shantae, you stay." Straight viewers learning that gender is something you can play with, not just fear. Did drag lose some of its danger when it became a TV format? Probably. Did some of the edges get filed down into merch and catchphrases? Definitely. But if a campy reality show convinces a lonely, terrified kid that there is a world where people like them not only exist but win, are you sure you want to write that off as just entertainment? 6. Sir Ian McKellen, the wizard who came out and chose the fight. Most people know him as Gandalf or Magneto, the wizard, the mutant, the voice that sounds like it's echoing out of a mountain. He could have stayed exactly that. A beloved actor, politely vague about who he went home to. Instead, in 1988, in the middle of Britain's panic over Section 28, a law designed to erase any positive mention of homosexuality in schools. Ian McKellen went on BBC Radio, slammed the law, and then quietly said, "I am gay to the whole country." No safety net, no PR strategy. This was before superhero paychecks, before global franchise money. Coming out could have shrunk his career overnight. Some people warned him it would. What it actually did was something stranger. It made him freer. He said that being honest about himself made him a better actor because he finally stopped acting off screen. He didn't stop at a statement. He co-founded Stonewall UK, visited schools and prisons, met with politicians, marched, spoke, showed up. He became that rare thing, an out older gay man who lived long enough to tell young queer kids, you can get here too. And yes, the criticism exists. It's easy to be brave once you're knighted and rich. He came out when he had less to lose. Maybe. But when he did it, being a gay public figure was still a career risk, not a brand. He traded the comfort of being assumed straight for a lifetime of being the gay actor before anything else. If you grew up with nothing but tragic queer characters, imagine what it meant to watch Gandalf on screen and then see the same man on TV calmly say, I'm gay and I'm fine. For a lot of people, that was the first time hero and homosexual lived in the same body. Maybe he's comfortable now. Maybe he earned that comfort because he stepped into the fire when it still burned. 7. Elliot Page, the boy who chose truth over a perfect lie. For years, the world knew Elliot Page as a girl. The sarcastic pregnant teen in Juno, the sharp, androgynous architect in Inception, the indie darling on red carpets, swallowed by dresses that looked like they belonged to someone else. People called it awkward charm. Inside, it felt like wearing someone else's skin. He's talked about panic attacks before premieres, the dread of putting on gowns, posing, smiling, knowing everyone loved a version of him that felt like drag he never chose. Hollywood adored the character they decided he was. In 2020, in the middle of a wave of anti-trans hysteria, he broke the script. Hi friends, I want to share with you that I am trans. New name, new pronouns, new target on his back. Overnight, he became both hope and lightning rod, held up as a symbol by some, torn apart by others who suddenly felt entitled to his body and history. He described the relief of finally seeing himself in the mirror after top surgery as life-saving. At the same time, he used the bigger spotlight to talk about something beyond himself. Trans kids banned from sports, denied healthcare, turned into talking points instead of humans. And of course, the backlash. He's doing it for attention. He was a lesbian yesterday, now he's a man? Hollywood trend. If you honestly think coming out as trans in public makes your life easier, you're not paying attention. Elliot traded a comfortable, award-winning lie for a dangerous truth. Because not telling it was slowly killing him. Does it unsettle you to see someone you knew become someone else? Sit with that. Somewhere, there's a trans kid watching The Umbrella Academy, seeing Elliot stand there with a flat chest and an unforced smile and thinking, if he can do that in front of the world, maybe I can at least whisper it to myself. Isn't that what inspiration really is? Someone choosing authenticity over approval, so you feel a little less crazy for wanting the same? 8. Harvey Milk, the man who told us, we deserve to exist in daylight before rainbow flags. Before Pride merch at the mall, there was a guy with big glasses and a bigger grin standing on a soapbox in San Francisco, yelling one word over and over, hope. Harvey Milk wasn't rich. He wasn't born into power. He was a camera shop owner who got tired of watching his friends get beaten, fired, evicted just for being who they were. So he did the most dangerous, ridiculous thing an openly gay man could do in the 1970s. He ran for office. And he kept losing. People told him, sit down, be quiet. You're making it worse. He didn't sit down. On his 4th try, he won. One seat on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, but symbolically, it was like the universe finally cracked open a little. A gay man in government, not hiding, not apologizing, telling every closeted kid, you are not crazy for wanting more than survival. Then came the assassin, one angry man with a gun who thought he could shut Harvey up forever. He killed him. But here's the thing. When you kill someone who's been preaching hope, you don't bury the message. You set it on fire and blow it across the world. If you're watching this, maybe you're not out. Maybe you can't be. That's okay. You're not a coward. You are surviving in a world Harvey helped change. But if his story hits something in your chest, stay with us. Subscribe, because every time we tell these stories, we're carrying his megaphone a little further, until no queer kid ever has to ask if they're allowed to dream big. 9. Marsha P. Johnson, the street queen who refused to leave anyone behind. If Harvey fought in city halls, Marsha P. Johnson fought in the places polite people crossed the street to avoid. Black, poor, trans, often homeless. She was everything society was trained to hate at once, and yet somehow she glowed. When police raided the Stonewall Inn, people like Marsha were supposed to run. Instead, she and her sisters threw heels, bottles, bricks, attitude, and refused to go quietly. That riot became the spark for pride. Not the corporate parade, the riot. At the front were drag queens, sex workers, street kids, the ones history usually edits out. But Marsha's real revolution wasn't just one night. With Sylvia Rivera, she opened a tiny, chaotic house for queer kids with nowhere to go. Money came from hustling, performing, doing whatever they had to do. If you were young and thrown out for being trans or gay, you could crash on their floor, eat their food. She'd give you her last dollar and then laugh like everything was going to be okay. People mocked her, called her crazy, called her a clown. Even inside the movement, more respectable gays tried to push her and other trans women aside so they wouldn't scare straight people. Sound familiar? Marsha didn't have a brand. She didn't have sponsors. She had flowers in her hair and this one belief: nobody is free until everybody is free. If you've ever felt too much, too loud, too poor, too anything to matter, Marsha is your saint. And if you believe the movement should never abandon the people at the bottom, hit subscribe. This channel is on your side of that argument. 10. Nguyen Huong Giang, the girl from Vietnam who refused to be a joke. Now let's come home for a second. It's easy to talk about legends in America or Europe and forget the kids sitting in small apartments in Hanoi, Saigon, thinking, yeah, but what about us? Nguyen Huong Giang started as that rumored contestant on TV. People whispered, laughed, pointed at her body, called her names that weren't hers. In a country where being trans was a punchline, she chose the most terrifying place to exist: the spotlight. Vietnam Idol, stages, cameras, comments. She kept singing anyway, kept showing up in full makeup, full vulnerability, fully herself, while thousands of strangers debated whether she was really a woman. Then she stepped onto the international stage at Miss International Queen and won. A Vietnamese trans woman crowned on a global stage. For once, the joke didn't win. She did. And she didn't stop at crowns and glamour shots. Every interview, every show, every appearance, she dragged the conversation back to dignity. The right to exist, to love, to be seen as more than a scandal. Now she's walking into Miss Universe as the face of Vietnam. Think about that. A country that once laughed at her now sends her to represent them in front of the world. If you're watching from Vietnam or anywhere in Asia, you know how big that is. She's not perfect. None of them are. But she is proof that a trans kid born in a place that tells you no can grow up and make the whole world say, wow. If that makes you feel even 1% braver, stay. Subscribe. This channel is here to remind you, your story is not too small, too local, or too Asian to matter. You belong in this history too. If you're still here, maybe it's because something in these stories sounds like your own. None of these people were perfect. They were loud, messy, late, scared. But they stood up anyway, and the air got a little easier for all of us to breathe. Now it's your turn. Which legend hit you hardest? Who did we miss? Tell me in the comments, and if you want more stories that are unapologetically on your side, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay in this little queer corner of YouTube.